Right, today's lesson is on VisGroups. So a VisGroup, this is something to kind of supplement your knowledge of the program. It's not necessarily used for building the levels so much as it is to manage what you're looking at and help the level building process, especially as you get further and further into this level. You're going to find yourself not being able to see things, or you're going to have so much stuff blocking what you're trying to look at. So let's take a look at this map here. This is some map I did a couple years ago. It's got a basement level here, and down in the basement we've got kind of like these torture chairs and body bags and whatnot, some cells down here. But if we look at this in the three-dimensional view, or I'm sorry, the two-dimensional view, you can see, I mean, things are starting to get pretty cluttered here. When we look at this map from this view right here, there's so much stuff that it is really hard when you get into these areas to find individual objects. And so the program, Hammer, includes a thing called VisGroups, and VisGroups allow us to put stuff into like it's a visibility group. And so if you look over here on the side, by default this will be blank, but the auto tab, the user section, will be blank. But if you click on auto, it defaults with sort of the known elements that are in the world, and you'll see things like world geometry, no draw, sky, displacements. So this first category here, world geometry, this is going to be all your brushes, displacements, your skybox, and then no draw we haven't talked about yet, but no draw is boxes that are that don't render. And so like for example, if you want to take your skybox out because the skybox is getting in your way of seeing what you're trying to work on, I can come over here to the VisGroups and I can uncheck sky. And now if we go back here and we fly outside, you'll notice that my skybox is gone. Okay? And then I can come back over here, I can check sky, and it'll put my skybox back. Now, something to keep in mind, when you uncheck it from the VisGroup, if you try to compile this, it will compile without your skybox, which will create a million leaks and crash your map. So before you try to compile your maps, you want to make sure all the things that you need are in the map and visible. So you can check and uncheck this auto box here, and it will recheck everything. So if I come through here and uncheck a bunch of stuff, and then I check auto, so that turns everything off. If I hit it again, it rechecks everything. So that way you're positive that all this stuff is in your map, your skybox and all your entities and things like that. Now if we scroll down through the listing here of all the other items, we have entities. Okay, and this is going to be all of our like brush entities, triggers, lights, NPCs. These are all of our regular things that are in the map. So like if I undo point entities, that's pretty much all my props. You can see them, you can see all the props disappear when I hit this box right here. If I do all entities, that's going to get rid of every trigger, every light, every NPC in my map. All that's going to be left pretty much are brushes. So if you kind of float through here, you'll see it's pretty empty in here. Okay. And then if I bring back my entities, all my lights and fixtures and all that stuff come back. This is a good room to do it in here. We turn off all the entities. Now, if you turn off all the entities, you can still add entities. And they will stay on the screen. And then what you would have to do is turn your entities on and off to kind of capture the new ones that you've added. So, but if you find yourself with a lot of clutter in your map, you can turn this off. Like if I were in here and I wanted to build a new section to this room here, you know, and rather than working around all of these, you know, overlays and triggers and all that stuff, I could simply just turn this all off, and it allows me to work without accidentally clicking or trying to find my way through things. Now on the user tab here, this is where you can create your own categories of VisGroups. So for example, I have one called stairs. So if I turn off stairs, it actually hides all the stairs, because when I guess when I was building this a few years ago, the stairs were probably cluttering up my view. So I added all the stairs to a VisGroup, and so all my stairs can go away. Up on the roof, I've got a helipad, so let's go take a look at that. Alright, so here's the helipad, and we can turn that off and on. Okay, and I actually think I built this. Yeah, I did. That's why it was probably a lot of brushes, and so by turning it off, it kind of cleared up my visibility a little bit up here. All right, now how do I get something into one of these VisGroups so I can turn it off and on? So I've got a little sample set up in the basement here. So let's find my basement. Where is it? Is it in this tunnel here? Let's see, there's that. We'll go through this door, down through here. Here we go. All right, so here we are in the basement, back where we started. All right, so I've got this little crate here. All right, so this is just a brush, but this works with any object in the game, whether it's a prop or a light or a box or a brush or a trigger. Everything can be part of a VisGroup. Okay, so I'm going to take this guy right here, and if you just double click it, it opens up its properties. Now let's look at the difference between a brush and this little table here. Okay, so this is a regular physics prop, but look, it has a VisGroup tab at the end. Okay, let's look at this overlay. Same thing, VisGroup. This door, same thing, VisGroup. So anything you add in here, here's a light. It has a VisGroup. Okay, so anything in the game, pretty much, that you can put into the level can be part of a visibility group. So what we want to do is, if this is just a regular brush, right, it's just a little crate that I made with my block tool. So the only thing it has is a VisGroup, because this is just a brush. So what we're going to do here is, if you already have an existing group, these are VisGroups that have already been created, and you're going to notice that by default this brush is part of world geometry because it's a brush. Now if I already have a group that I want to put it in, I could just check that box. Like if I check stairs, now this is in the stair visibility group. So if I turn off the stairs, that block right there is going to disappear. Now let's say I want to create a custom group called morgue. Okay, so I could click edit groups, click new group, and I'll name it morgue, and click close. Okay, now if we go down here, we'll see that morgue is listed, and I can check that box. So now this box is part of the morgue group. It's also still part of world geometry. I can also add it to multiple groups. So it's world geometry because it's a brush, it's part of the morgue, but in the grand scheme of the whole game, it's also part of the basement. So it can be in all of those groups. It could also be in the lab, because maybe this lab and cells, right? Because I think there's prison cells off to the side here. So an object can be in multiple visibility groups depending on, you know, if you want to get rid of all your brushes, or you want to turn off the entire basement, or just the morgue, or just the lab. Things can be in very small groups if you'd like them to. So let's click apply, close this. Now if we look on our VisGroup over here, you'll see there's a basement and a morgue. So if I turn off the morgue, the box disappeared. If I turn off basement, the box also disappears. If I go to auto and I turn off world geometry, the box also disappears because it's a brush. Now if I change my mind, like I don't want this to be in here anymore, I just simply double click it and I can take it out of the basement group. Click apply. Right? Now, this is going to seem like it's a pain in the butt, but as your map starts to get more and more and more complex, and there's more and more hundreds and hundreds and thousands of objects, we have to sort of come up with a way to sort of manage our visibility, because it gets really difficult sometimes to work within these things when you have so many, hundreds and hundreds of objects inside all these different spaces here. So so what I would recommend, if you have a multi-story building, go ahead and group those things together and put them into a single viz group. Or even if you're not creating custom viz groups, at least understand that you can go to auto, and while you're building world geometry, when you're making walls and brushes and stuff like that, you can turn off all your entities so that it's a lot easier to work without the clutter of all the entities in the area, and then we can turn them back on. Most important thing though, remember before you compile your map that you turn everything back on, otherwise you're going to be missing chunks. Alright, that is all. That is VisGroups.